What is it about music and memory that is such a profound relationship? A few years ago, I gave a TED talk and my vocal coach said, you've got to do something that's different. You've got to begin with something to get the audience's attention. This was at the concert hall. There was a truckload of people there. It happened to be on Remembrance Day, November the 11th, in the morning, which is a significant day in the United Kingdom. And my cousin Eric Bogle had written a wonderful song called No Man's Land or Green Fields of France about a fellow called Willie McBride whose grave he'd seen in the First World War. So I sang the first verse of that song. I do a number of Eric's songs. His mother and my mother were sisters, and another one of his songs that I love to sing is called Leaving Nancy, and it's a song about him getting on a train in Glasgow to emigrate to Australia and leaving his mother standing on the platform. I mention that because when my own mother passed away, I couldn't sing that song for, I guess, 10 years or more without just bursting into tears because Nancy and my mum were very close. Why does music have that emotional weight? What's the point of it? It doesn't weave, sew, plough, doesn't make hypotheses, doesn't present theories, can't generate plans. What's it for? What we do know, though, is it has this amazing capacity to elicit memories. And we can see that if you ask anybody, for example, to go back to their favourite music. Normally, and I make no judgment at all about what sort of music anyone should listen to, that's their own business, but it's always what is most autobiographically relevant to them. And often it's to do with some event that occurred, and most of the studies would suggest that most of the people go back to their teen years or their early 20s, when attention is highest, hormones are raging, first love affair, first breakup. But we can also see it in indigenous populations where there's been no writing, for example, and the history of the groups or and their relationship to the land or to others is carried by song lines, and almost always there's a song or music or some sort of melodic contour that facilitates the memory of their history. And you can also see the impact that music can have on people with dementia. So you can have individuals who are in a cognitive fog and not really interacting with their environment, and you sing them a song that is relevant to them. Maybe it was a song they played at the wedding or when they met their husband or partner for the first time, or it awakens them. And there are many examples of people who just seem to suddenly become a different person. They start singing the song, they know all the words, they tap their feet, they start moving, and only really music can do that. And I think what I'm really interested in as a musician, but also as a neuroscientist, is why? Why does that happen? What are the mechanisms that underpin this gold pass that music has to our memory systems? And what is its evolutionary significance? Why is this such a universal phenomenon when we have language and articulate speech, which is what I'm using now, as the primary communication system for information, planning, ideas, and so on and so forth? But I'm now much more interested in trying to get at what the mechanisms might be. And I guess that's for future times, because I think that's going to prove to be very complicated. But one of the things that seems to be true is that some of the hormones and transmitters that are released when you listen to music that you like or that has autobiographical relevance to you are things like endorphins, dopamine, and a peptide called oxytocin. And I'm interested in this peptide because it's known to be important in bonding and attachment between mums and infants before speech comes into line. That's so communication with pre-verbal infants. But it's also known to be important in driving cooperative interactions, pro-social empathic interactions. And in fact, if you specifically remove the oxytocin receptor from an area of the brain involved in processing music in mice, they can't socially learn anymore. Now, one of the things that I think is important about music is that it's, as I've said, a driver of pro-social empathic interactions. Speech tends to individualize us. It's a one-to-one exchange. So I think one of the reasons why music has such power is because it's driving this social cooperative interaction through oxytocin, and it has a very specific role in us engaging in our interactions with others and remembering our interactions with others over a period of time. There's a lot more to it than that, but all of you will have some piece of music that creates almost a complete memory of a time. And if I think back to my own upbringing and history, there's a couple of songs that I could pick out that have a special significance for me. When I was quite young, my sister was about 5 years older, and all I listened to was the Beatles and the Searchers and Swinging Blue Jeans, Herman's Hermits, the Kinks, all these wonderful bands in the early to mid-60s. She then moved to Germany, and I went back into listening to classical music, which has also been a love of mine. And at around about 16 or 17, I had a little transistor radio in my bed in Walthamstow in London, in England, and I was listening to John Peel, who had a very famous music show on BBC Radio. And all of a sudden this song came on, and I was listening to it, and I was utterly transfixed by this song. And it was a song by Joni Mitchell called River, which is on one of my top 10 albums called Blue. And I listened to this song, and it suddenly hit me that actually there was a person alive today in the folk idiom that was a genius, that was writing songs of profundity, of just brilliant music. And that really stuck me and changed the way I was thinking about modern songwriters. And in fact, there was a lot of new music that was being made that was incredibly worthy and really worthy of comparing with sort of the best classical songwriters. And then when I went to university, I got introduced to a band called Fairport Convention, a folk rock band, and to the wondrous Sandy Denny, who still gets straight to my heart whenever I hear her sing. And there's one of her songs called Who Knows Where the Time Goes. And for whatever reason, that song echoes with me all the time, and it's something that I want played when I'm no longer able to hear it, when I'm in the box, and I'd love to be able to knock on the box and say, hey, I want to hear this one more time. But I think that song is something I'd love played at my funeral. I came across something that I was kind of spooky, I felt, because I'm also a big fan of Franz Schubert. He just also somehow penetrates into the essence of me. And when I was reading and thinking about this, it suddenly occurred to me that both Schubert and Sandy Denny died at the age of 31, far too young. But that just says to me, and that's been a memory that stuck with me since then, that it doesn't matter how long you live. It's the echo that you leave behind that is so important. So I can name all sorts of other songs. I can remember, for example, when I bought the first album, Fragile, I can almost visualize running up the stairs in North Court in Cambridge, desperate to put it on the turntable to hear it. The first time I heard Stevie Wonder, Superstition in somebody's room, and I think, well, who on earth is this? What wonder is that? So, yeah, there's all sorts of things that music does, and they're all very personal. But the key element, I think, here is the interaction that music brings, whether it be music or dance, and the way that it drives social, cooperative, empathic interactions where we really understand other people that we're making music with or that we're dancing with in a way that's quite unique to this communication medium that we have as a universal across everyone across the world. So there is somewhere in there a key to how music is able to generate these memories, to generate these autobiographical memories. And if we can get to that down the track with all the neuroscience and the imaging that's being done, maybe when we then look at people with dementia or with some sort of neurological problem, and we can use music as a way of uncovering them again, of driving them and bringing them back into the now, if you like, then maybe we can, if we understand these mechanisms better, we'll understand better how this is working, and that may help us in terms of finding some sort of additional approaches and therapies that can help people who are slipping away from us. So it's a very powerful thing. I urge you all to go away, find your favourite song, play it, and wallow in that wonderful memory that that song brings for you.